that, let's bring down the music, because now you know who we're reading, and you saw by the title card on the show. And let's come up here and welcome everyone to another Sunday night edition of Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. Hope you're having a good night. As you can see, I am not in the library again. They are still trying to dig out the bug that caused problems a couple weeks ago. Last week we made a decision to do the show here, and I'm playing it safe. Then we're going to just do the show from here as opposed to driving up the road a mile or so to the library. Hope you're having a good weekend, good week last week. Lots of crazy things going on in the world, including the banning of dictionaries and encyclopedias in Florida. What the heck is going on? Are they that stupid that they have to ban learning material because they don't want people to learn and get smarter? Interesting. Kind of like those people who want to get rid of Mark Twain books, because there are quite a number of them, including this one. But before we get started, don't forget, and like I said, I appreciate you guys stopping in, but when you do, please remember to like and subscribe. It is a wonderful thing when you're able to do that. It's been an interesting week, and I'm excited to read the next 3 chapters. Don't forget the unique thing about this, the next thing about the book, Mysterious Stranger. This is the only Mark Twain book never to be finished. I have an idea why, and I'll talk about that next Sunday during the final chapters, when consider there's only 2 more chapters next week. But I think it's time to get started with Mark Twain's Mysterious Stranger. Gotta love Libby. Be able to get a book in record time. But let's get started with The Mysterious Stranger, written by legendary American author Mark Twain. This is Chapter 7. Margaret announced a party and invited 40 people. The date for it was 7 days away. This was a fine opportunity. Margaret's house stood by itself, and it could be easily watched. All the week it was watched night and day. Margaret's household went out and in as usual, but they carried nothing in their hands, and neither they or others brought anything to the house. This was ascertained. Evidently, rations for 40 people were not being fetched. It would have, if they were furnished any substance, it would have it would have to be made on the premises. It was true that Margaret went out with a basket every evening, but the spies ascertained that she always brought it back empty. The guests arrived at noon and filled the place. Father Adolf followed. Also, after a while, the little astrologer, without invitation. The spies had informed him that neither at the back nor the front had any parcels been brought in. He entered and found the eating and drinking going on finely, and everything progressing in a lively and festive way. He glanced around and perceived that many of the cooked delicacies, and all were native and foreign fruits, were of a perishable character, and he also recognized that these were fresh and perfect. No apparitions, no incantations, no thunder. That settled it. This was witchcraft. And not only that, but of a new kind, a kind never dreamed of before. It was prodigious power, an illustrious power. He resolved to discover its secret. The announcement of it would resound throughout the world, penetrate the most remote islands, paralyze all the nations with amazement, and carry his name with it, and make him renowned forever. It was a wonderful piece of luck, a splendid piece of luck. A glory of it made him dizzy. All the house made room for him. Margaret politely seated him. Ursula ordered Godfrey to bring a special table for him. Then she decked it and furnished it and asked for his order. "Bring me what you will," he said. The two servants brought supplies from the pantry, together with white wine and red, a bottle of each. The astrologer, who very likely had never seen such delicacies before, poured out a beaker of red wine, drank it off, poured another, then began to eat with grand appetite. I was not expecting Satan, for it was more than a week since I had seen or heard of him, but now he came in, and I knew it by the feel, though people were in the way and I could not see him. I heard him apologizing for intruding, and he was going away, but Margaret urged him to stay, and he thanked her and stayed. She brought him along, introducing him to the girls and to Meddling, and to some of the elders. There was quite a rustle of whispers. "It's that young stranger we hear so much about and can't get sight of. He is away so much. Dear, dear, but he is beautiful. What is his name?" "Philip Trem." "Ah, it fits him. You see, Tram in German is German for dream." "What does he do?" "Studying for the ministry, they say. His face is his fortune. He'll be a cardinal some day. Where is his home? Away down somewhere in the tropics, they say. He has a rich uncle down there." And so on. He made his way at once. Everybody was anxious to know him and talk with him. Everyone noticed how cool and fresh it was all of a sudden, and wondered at, for they could see the sun was beating down the same as before outside, and the sky was clear of clouds, but no one guessed the reason, of course. The astrologer had drunk his second beaker. He poured out a third. He set the bottle down, and by accident overturned it. He seized it before much was spilled, and held it up by the light, saying, "What a pity! It is royal wine." Then his face lighted with joy or triumph or something, and he said, "Quick, bring a bowl." It was brought, a 4-quart one. He took up that 2-pint bottle and began to pour. Went on pouring, the red liquor gurgling and gushing into the white bowl, rising higher and higher up its sides, everyone staring and holding their breath, and presently the bowl was full to the brim. "Look at that bottle," he said, holding it up. "It is full yet." I glanced at Satan, and in that moment he vanished. Then Father Adolf rose up, flushed and excited, crossed himself, began to thunder his great voice, "This house is bewitched and accursed." People began to cry and shriek and crowd towards the door. I summoned this detected household too. His words were cut off short. His face became red, then purple, but he could not utter another sound. Then I saw Satan. A transparent film melted into the astrologer's body. Then the astrologer put up his hand, and apparently in his own voice said, "Wait, remain where you are." All stopped where they stood. "Bring a funnel." Ursula brought it, trembling and scared, and he struck it into the bottle and took up the great bottle and began to pour the wine back. The people gazed at him and dazed with astonishment, for they knew the bottle was already full before he began. He emptied the whole of the bowl into the bottle, then smiled out over the room, chuckled, and said indifferently, "It is nothing. Anybody can do it. With my powers, I can even do much more." A frightened cry outburst everywhere. "Oh my God, he is possessed!" and there was a tumultuous rush for the door, which swiftly emptied the house of all who did not belong in it, except us boys and meddling. We boys knew the secret, and would have told it if we could, but we couldn't. We were very thankful to Satan for furnishing that good help at the needful time. Margaret was pale and crying. Meddling looked kind of terrified. Ursula the same, but Gottfried was the worst. He couldn't stand. He was so weak and scared, for he was of a witch family, you know, and it would have been bad for him to be suspected. Agnes came loafing in, looking pious and unaware, and wanted to rub up against Ursula and be petted. But Ursula was afraid of her and shrank away from her, but pretending she was not meaning any incivility, for she knew very well it wouldn't answer to any of the strained relations with that kind of a cat. But we boys took Agnes and petted her, for Satan would not have befriended her if he had not had a good opinion of her, and that was an endorsement enough for us. He seemed to trust anything that had the moral sense. Outside, the guests, panic-stricken, scattered in every direction and fled in a pitiable state of terror. In such a tumult that they made with their running and sobbing and shrieking and shouting, that soon all the village came flocking from their houses to see what had happened, and thronged the street and shuddered and jostled one another in excitement and fright. And then Father Adolf appeared, and they fell apart in two walls, like the cloven Red Sea, and presently down this lane the astrologer came striding and mumbling, and where he passed the lanes surged back in packed masses, and fell silent with awe, and their eyes stared, and their breasts heaved, and several women fainted. And where he was gone by the crowd swarmed together, and followed him at a distance, talking excitedly and asking questions and finding out the facts. Finding out the facts and passing them on to the others, and improvements, which soon enlarged the bowl of wine to a barrel, and made the one bottle hold it all, and yet remained empty to the last. When the astrologer reached the market square, he went straight to the juggler, fantastically dressed, who was keeping brass balls in the air, and took them from him, face turned around upon the approaching crowd, and said, "This poor clown is ignorant of his art. Come forward and see an expert perform." So saying, he tossed the balls one up and the other, and set them whirling in a slender, bright oval in the air, and added another, and another, and another, and then soon no one could see whence he had gotten them, adding and adding and adding, the oval lengthening all the time, his hands moving so swiftly that they were just a web or a blur, and not distinguishable as hands, and were such as counted said there were now 100 balls in the air. The spinning great oval reached up 20 feet in the air, and was a shining and glinting and wonderful sight. Then he folded his arms and told the balls to go on spinning without his help, and they did it. After a couple of minutes, he said, "There, that will do," and the oval broke and came crashing down, and the balls scattered abroad, rolled everywhere and hither. And wherever one of them came, the people fell back in dread, and no one would touch it. It made him laugh and scoffed at the people, and called them cowards and old women. Then he turned and saw the tightrope, and said foolish people were daily wasting their money to see a clumsy, ignorant varlet degrade that beautiful art. Now they would see the work of a master. With that, he made a spring into the air, and lit firm on the feet of the rope. Then he hopped the whole length of it back and forth on one foot, with his hands clasped over his eyes, and next he began to throw somersaults both backward and forward, and through 27. The people murmured, for the astrologer was old, and always before he had been halting of movement, and at times even lame. But he was nimble enough now, and went on with his antics in the liveliest manner. Finally he sprang lightly down, walked away, passed up the road and around the corner, and disappeared. Then that great, pale, silent, solid crowd drew a deep breath and looked into one another's faces as if they said, was it real? Did you see it, or was I only I, and was I dreaming? Then they broke into a low murmur of talking and fell apart in couples and moved toward their homes, still talking in an odd way, with faces close together, laying a hand on the arms and making each other's gesture as people made their way. They have been deeply impressed by something. We boys followed behind our fathers and listened, catching all we could of what they said. And when they sat down in our house and continued their talk, they still had us for company. They were in a sad mood, for it was certain, they said, that disaster for the village must follow this awful visitation of witches and devils. Then my father remembered that Father Adolf had been struck dumb at the moment of his denunciation. They have not ventured to lay their hands upon the anointed servant of God before, he said, and now, and how they could have dared it this time, I cannot make out, for he wore his crucifix. Isn't it so? Yes, said the others. We saw it. It is serious, friends. It is very serious. Always before we had a protection. It has failed. The others shook, as with a sort of chill, and murmured those words over. It has failed. God has forsaken us. It is true, said Sempi Wollemeyer's father. There is nowhere to look for help. The people will realize this, said Nicholas's father, the judge, and despair will take away their courage and their energy. We have indeed fallen upon evil times. He sighed, and Wollmeyer said in a troubled voice, the report of all this will go about the country, and our village will be shunned as being under the displeasure of God. The golden stag will know hard times. True, neighbor, said my father. All of us will suffer, all in repute, many in estate. And good God, what is it? That can come to finish us. Name it. Gott's Willen. The indictment. It smote like a thunderclap, and they were like a swoon with the terror of it. Then the dread of this calamity roused their energies, and they stopped brooding and considered ways to avert it. They discussed this and that and the other way, and talked till the afternoon was far spent, then confessed that at present they could have arrived at no decision. So they parted sorrowfully, with oppressed hearts which were filled with bodings. While they were saying their parting words, I slipped out and set my course for Margaret's house to see what was happening there. I met many people, but none of them greeted me. It ought to have been surprising, but it was not, for they were distraught with fear and dread, and they were not in their right minds. I think they were white and haggard, and walking like persons in a dream, their eyes open but seeing nothing, their lips moving but uttering nothing, and worldly clasping and unclasping their hands without knowing it. At Margaret's it was like a funeral. She and Wilhelm sat together on the sofa, but said nothing, and not even holding hands. Both were steeped in gloom, and Margaret's eyes were red from the crying she had been doing. She said, I have been begging him to go and come no more, and so save himself alive. I cannot bear to be his murderer. This house is bewitched, and no inmate will escape the fire, but he will not go, and he will be lost with the rest of us. Wilhelm said he would not go. If there was danger for her, his place was by her, and there he would remain. Then she began to cry again, and it was all so mournful that I wished I could had stayed away. There was a knock now, and Satan came in, fresh and cheery and beautiful, and brought that whiny atmosphere of his and changed the whole thing. He never said a word about what had been happening, nor about the awful fears which were freezing the blood in our hearts of the community, but began to talk and rattled on about all manner of happy, pleasant things, and the next about music, an artful stroke which cleared away the remnant of Margaret's depression, and brought her spirits and her interest broad awake. She had not heard any one talk so well and so knowingly on the subject before, and she was so uplifted by it and charmed that what she was feeling lit up her face and came out in her words, and Wilhelm noticed it and did not look as pleased as aught had been done. The next, Satan branched off into poetry and recited some and did it well, and Margaret was charmed again, and again Wilhelm was not pleased as he ought to have been, and this time Margaret noticed it and was remorseful. I fell asleep to pleasant music that night. The patter of rain upon the panes was dull growling of the distant thunder. Away in the night, Satan came and roused me and said, "Come with me. Where shall we go?" "Anywhere, so it is with you." Then there was a fierce glare of sunlight, and he said, "This is China." That was a grand surprise, and it made me sort of drunk with vanity and gladness to think I had come so far, so much, much farther than anyone else in our village, including Bartle Sperling, who had such a great opinion of his travels. We buzzed around over that empire for more than half an hour, and saw the whole of it. It was wonderful, the spectacles we saw, and some were beautiful, others too horrible to think. For instance, however, I may go into that by and by, and also why Satan chose China for the excursion instead of another place. It would be interrupt my tale to do it now. Finally, we stopped flitting and lit. We came upon a mountain commanding a vast landscape of mountain range and gorge and valley and plain and river, with cities and villages slumbering in sunlight and glimpse of blue sea on the farther verge. It was a tranquil and dreamy picture, beautiful to the eye and restful to the spirit. If we could only make a change like that whenever we wanted to, the world would be easier to live in than it is. For change of scene shifts the mind's burdens to the other's shoulder and banishes old, shop-worn weariness from mind and body both. We talked together, and I had the idea of trying to reform Satan and persuade him to lead a better life. I told him about all the things he had been doing and begged him to be more considerate and stop making people unhappy. I said I knew he didn't mean any harm, but that he ought to stop and consider the possible consequences of a thing before launching it into that impulsive, random way of his. Then he would not make so much trouble. He was not hurt by this plain speech. He only looked amused and surprised and said, "What? I do random things? Indeed, I never do. I stop and consider possible consequences. Where is the need? I know what the consequences are always going to be. Always." "Oh, Satan, then how could you do these things?" "Well, I will tell you. And you must understand if you can. You belong to a singular race. Every man is a suffering machine and happiness machine combined. The two functions work together harmoniously with a fine and delicate precision on the give and take principle. For every happiness turned out in one department, the other stands ready to modify it with a sorrow or a pain, maybe a dozen. In most cases, the man's life is about equally divided between happiness and unhappiness. Whether this is not the case, the unhappiness predominates always, never the other. Sometimes man's make and disposition are such that his misery machine is able to do nearly all the business. Such a man goes through life without ignorance of what happiness is. Everything he touches, everything he does brings a misfortune upon him. You have seen such people. To that kind of person's life is not an advantage, is it? It is only a disaster. Sometimes for an hour's happiness, a man's machine makes him pay years of misery. Don't you know that? It happens every now and then. I will give you a case of two presently. Now, the people of your village are nothing to me. You know that, don't you? I did not like to speak out too flatly, so I said I suspected it. Well, it is true that they are nothing to me. It is not possible that they should be. The difference between them and me is abysmal, immeasurable. They have no intellect. No intellect. Nothing that resembles it. At a future time, I will examine what man calls his mind and give you the details of that chaos. Then you will see and understand. Men have nothing in common with me. There is no point of contact. They have foolish little feelings and foolish little vanities and impertinences and ambitions. Their foolish little life is but a laugh, a sigh, an extinction. And they have no sense. Only the moral sense. I will show you what I mean. Here is a red spider. So it is big as a pin's head. Can you imagine an elephant being interested in him, caring whether he is happy or not, or whether he is wealthy or poor, or whether his sweetheart returns his love or not, or whether his mother is sick or well, or whether he is looked up to in society or not, or whether his enemies will smite him, or his friends desert him, or whether his hopes will suffer blight, or his political ambitions fail, or whether he shall die in the bosom of his family or neglected and despised in a foreign land. These things can never be important to the elephant. They are nothing to him. He cannot shrink his sympathies to the microscopic size of them. Man is to me as the red spider is to the elephant. The elephant has nothing against the spider. He cannot get down to that remote level. I have nothing against man. The elephant is indifferent. I am indifferent. The elephant would not take the trouble to do the spider an ill turn. If he took the notion, he might do him a good turn, if it came to his way and cost nothing. I have done men good services, but no ill turns. The elephant lives in a century, the red spider in a day. In power, in intellect, and in dignity, the one creature is separated from the other by a distance which is simply astronomical. Yet in these, as in all qualities, man is immeasurably further below me than is the wee spider below the elephant. Man's mind is clumsy, and tediously and laboriously patches little trivialities together and gets a result. Such as it is, my mind creates. Do you get the force of that? Creates anything it desires, and in a moment. Creates without material, creates fluids, solids, colors, anything, everything, out of the air, nothing which is called thought. creates a man, imagines a silk thread, imagines a machine to make it, imagines a picture, then by weeks of labor embroiders it on canvas with the thread. Think the whole thing, and in a moment it is before you, created. I think a poem, music, or record of a game of chess, anything that there is. This is the immortal mind. Nothing is beyond its reach. Nothing can obstruct my vision. The rocks are transparent to me, and darkness is daylight. I do not need to open a book. I take the whole of its contents into my mind at a single glance through the cover, and in a million years I could not forget a single word of it, nor its place in the volume. Nothing goes on in the skull of man, bird, fish, insect, or other creature which can be hidden from me. I pierce the learned man's brain with a single glance, and the treasures which cost him 60 years to accumulate are mine. He can forget, and he does forget, but I retain. Now then, I perceive by your thoughts that you are understanding me fairly well. Let us proceed. Circumstances might so fall out of the elephant could like the spider. Suppose he can see it, but he could not love it. His love is for his own kind, for his equals. An angel's love is sublime, adorable, divine, beyond the imagination of man, infinitely beyond it. But it is limited to his own august order. If it fell upon one of your race for only an instant, it would consume its object to ashes. No, we cannot love men, but we can be harmlessly indifferent to them. We can also like them sometimes. I like you and the boys. I like Father Peter, and for your sakes, I'm going to do all these things for the villagers. He saw that I was thinking a sarcasm, and explained his position. I have wrought well for the villagers, though it does not look like it on the surface. Your race never knows good fortune from ill. There are always mistaking the one for the other. It is because they cannot see into the future. What I am doing for the villagers will bear good fruit some day, in some cases to themselves, in others to unborn generations of men. No one will ever know that I was the cause, but it will be none the less true. For all that, among you boys you have a game. You stand a row of bricks on the end a few inches apart. You push a brick and knocks its neighbor over. The neighbor knocks over the next brick, and so until all row is prostrate. That is human life. A child's first act knocks over the initial block brick, and the rest will follow inexorably. If you could see into the future, as I can, you would see everything that was going to happen to that creature, for nothing can change the order of its life after the first event has determined it. That is, nothing will change it, because each act unfailingly begets an act. That act begets another, and so on to the end. And the seer can look forward down the line and see just what each act is to have birth, from cradle to grave. Does God order the career? Ordain it? No. The man's circumstance and environment order it. His first act determines the second and all that follow after. But suppose, for argument's sake, that the man would skip one of these acts, an apparently trifling one, for instance. Suppose that it had been appointed that on a certain day, at a certain hour and minute and second and fraction of a second, he should go to the well and did not go. That man's career would change utterly, From the moment hence to the grave would be wholly different from career which his first act as a child had arranged for him. Indeed, it it might be that if he had gone to the well, it would have ended his career on a throne, and that omitting to it would set him up on a career that would lead to beggary and a pauper's grave. For instance, if at any time, say in boyhood, Columbus had skipped the triflingest little link in the chain of acts projected and made inevitable by his first childish act, it would have changed the whole subsequent life, and he would have become a priest and died obscure in an Italian village, and America would never have been discovered for 2 centuries afterward. I know this. To skip any one of the billion acts in Columbus's chain would have wholly changed his life. I have examined his billion of possibility careers, and only one of them occurs the discovery of America. You people do not suspect that all your acts are of one size and importance, but it is true. To snatch an apparent fly is as big with fate as you are was with any other act. As the conquering of a continent, for instance? Yes. Now then, no man ever drops a link. The thing has never happened. Even when he is trying to make up his mind as to whether he will do a thing or not, that itself is a link, an act, in its proper place, in his chain. And when he finally decides an act, that also was the thing which was absolutely certain to do. You see, now that a man will never drop a link in his chain, he cannot. If he made up his mind to try, the project itself would be an unavoidable link, a thought bound to occur to him at the precise moment and made certain by his first act of babyhood. It seems so dismal. He is a prisoner of life, I said sorrowfully, and cannot get free. No. Of himself he cannot get away from the consequences of his first childish act. But I can free him. I looked up wistfully. I have changed the careers of a number of your villagers. I tried to thank him, but I found it difficult and let it drop. I shall make some other changes. You know that little Lisa Brandt? Oh, yes, everybody does. My mother says she is sweet and so lovely that she is not like any other child. She says she will be the pride of the village when she grows up, and its idol too, just as she is now. I can change her future. Make it better? I asked. Yes, and I will change the future of Nicholas. I was glad to hear. I was glad at this time, and said, I don't need to ask about his case. You will be surely do generously by him. It is my intention. Straight off, I was building that great future of Nicky's in my imagination, and had already made a renowned general of him and Hofmeister of the court, when I noticed that Satan was waiting for me to get ready to listen again. I was ashamed of having exposed my cheap imaginings to him, and was expecting some sarcasm, but it did not happen. He proceeded with this subject. Nicky's appointed life is 62 years. That's grand, I said. Lisa's 36. But as I told you, I shall change their lives in those ages. 2 minutes and a quarter from now, Nicholas will wake out of his sleep and find the rain blowing in. It was appointed that he should turn over and go to sleep again. But I have appointed that he shall get up, close the window first. That trifle will change his career entirely. He will rise in the morning 2 minutes later than his chain of his life had appointed him to rise. By consequence, therefore, nothing will ever happened to him in accordance with the details of the old chain. He took out his watch and sat looking at it for a few moments, then said, Nicholas has risen to close the window. His life is changed. His new career has begun. There will be consequences. This made me feel creepy. It was uncanny. But for this change, certain things would happen 12 days from now. For instance, Nicholas would save Lisa from drowning. He would arrive on the scene exactly at the right moment, 4 minutes past 10, the long ago pointed instant of time, and the water would be shoal, an achievement easy and certain. But he'll arrive some seconds too late now. Lisa will have struggled into deeper water. He will do his best, but both will drown. Oh, Satan, oh, dear Satan, I cried with tears rising in my eyes. Save them, don't let it happen. I cannot bear to lose Nicholas. He is my loving playmate and friend. I can think of Lisa's poor mother. I clung to him and begged and pleaded, but he was not moved. He made me sit down again, and told me to hear him out. I have changed Nicholas's life, and this changed Lisa's. If I had not done this, Nicholas would have saved Lisa. Then he would catch cold from his drenching. One of your race's fantastic, desolating scarlet fevers would follow, with pathetic after effects. For 46 years he would lie in his bed with a paralytic log, deaf and dumb and blind, and praying night and day for a blessing relief of death. Shall I change his life back? Oh, no. Oh, not for the world. In charity and pity, please leave as is. It is best so. I could not have changed any other link in his life and done so as good as service. He had a billion possible careers, but not one of them was worth living. They were charged with full and miseries and disasters, but in my intervention, it would do his brave deed 12 days from now, a deed begun and ended in 6 minutes, and get for all the reward those 46 years of sorrow and suffering I told you of. It is one of the cases I was thinking of a while ago, when I said that sometimes an act brings the actor an hour's happiness, and self-satisfaction is paid for or punished by years of suffering. I wondered what poor little Lisa's early death would save her from. He answered the thought. From 10 years of pain, slow recovery from an accident, and then 19 years pollution, shame, depravity, crime, ending with the death at the hands of the executioner. 12 days hence she will die. Her mother would save her life if she could. Am I not kinder than her mother? Oh, yes, indeed, yes, and wiser. Father Peter's case is coming on presently. He will be acquitted through unassailable proofs of his innocence. Why, Satan, how can that be? Do you really think of it? Indeed, I know it. His good name will be restored, and the rest of his life will be happy. I can believe it. To restore his good name will have that effect. His happiness will not proceed from that cause. I shall change his life from that day for his good. He will never know his good name has been restored. In my mind, in modesty, I asked for the particulars, but Satan paid no attention to my thought. Next, my mind wandered to the astrologer and wondered where he might be. In the moon, said Satan with a fleeting sound, which I believed was a chuckle. I've got him on the cold side of it, too. He doesn't know where he is, and he is not having a pleasant time. Still, it is good enough for him, a good place for his star studies. I shall need him presently, and I shall bring him back and possess him again. He has a long and cruel and odious life before him, but I will change that, for I have no feeling against him, and am quite willing to do him a kindness. I think I shall get him burned. He had such strange notions of kindness. But angels are made so, and do not know any better. Their ways are not like our ways, and besides, human beings are nothing to them. They think they are only freaks. It seems to me odd that he should put the astrologer so far away. He could have dumped him in Germany just as well, from where he would be handy. Far away, said Satan. To me, no place is far away. Distance does not exist to me. The sun is less than 100 million miles from here, and the light that is falling upon us takes 8 minutes to come. But I can make that flight or any other in a fraction of time, so it would cannot be measured by watch. I have but to think the journey, and it is accomplished. I gotta take a quick sip, guys. Oh, long chapter. I held out my hand and said, "The light lies upon it. Think it into the glass of wine, Satan." He did, and I drank the wine. "Break the glass," he said. I broke it. "There, you see it is real. The villagers thought the brass balls were magic stuff and were perishable as smoke. They were afraid to touch them. You are a curious lot, your race. But come along, I have business. I will put you to bed." Said and done. Then he was gone, but his voice came back to me through the rain and darkness, saying, "Yes, tell Seppi, but no other." It was the thought to answer to my thought. Like I said, guys, long chapters is closing in on this. Chapter 8. Sleep would not come. It was not because I was proud of my travels and excited about having been around the big world to China and feeling contemptuous of Bartle Spelling, the traveler, as he called himself, and looked down upon us each because he had been to Vienna once and was the only Elsdorf boy who had made such a journey and seen the world's wonders. At another time that would have kept me awake, but it did not affect me now. No, my mind was filled with Nicholas. My thoughts ran up to him only, and the good days we were to see together at romps and frolics in the woods and the fields and the river in the long summer days, in skating and sliding in the winter when our parents thought we were in school. And now he was going to be out of this young life, and the summers and the winters would come and go, and we others would rove and play as before, but his place would be vacant. We should see him no more. Tomorrow he would not suspect, but he would always, but he had always been, and it would shock me to hear him laugh, and to see him do some lightsome and frivolous things. For to me he would be a corpse with waxen hands and dull eyes, and I should see the shroud around his face. The next day he would not suspect, nor the next, and all the time his handful of days would be wasting swiftly away, and that awful thing coming nearer and nearer, his fate closing steadily around him, and no one knowing it but Seppi and me. 12 days. Only 12 days. It was awful to think it. I noticed that in my thoughts I was not calling him by his familiar names, Nick or Nicky, but was speaking of him by his full name, and reverently as one speaks of the dead. Also, as incident after incident of our comradeship came thronging into my mind out of the past, I noticed they were mainly cases where I had wronged him or hurt him, and they rebuked me and reproached me, and my heart was wrung with remorse, just as it just as it is when we remember our unkindness to friends who have passed beyond the veil, and we wish we could have them back again, if only for a moment, so we could go on with our knees into them and say, "Have pity and forgive." Once we were 9 years old when he went for a long errand of nearly 2 miles for the fruiter, who gave him a splendid big apple for reward, and he was flying home with it almost beside himself with astonishment and delight. And I met him, and he let me look at the apple, not thinking of treachery, and I ran off with it, eating it as I ran, he following me and begging. And when he overtook me, I offered him the core, which was all that was and I laughed. Then he turned away crying and said he had meant to give it to his little sister. That smote me, for she was slowly getting well from a sickness, and it would have been a proud moment for him to see her joy and surprise and have her caresses. But I was ashamed to say I was ashamed, and only said something rude and mean to pretend I did not care, and he made no reply in words, but there was wounded look in his face as he turned away towards home, which rose before me many times in the after years, in the night, and reproached me, and made me ashamed again. It had grown dim in my mind by and by. Then it disappeared, but it was back now, and not dim. Once at school when we were 11, I upset my ink and spoiled four copybooks and was in danger of severe punishment. But I put it upon him and he got the whipping. And only last year I had cheated him in a trade, giving him a large fish hook, which was partially broken through for three small sound ones. The first fish he caught broke the hook, but he did not know I was blamable, and he refused to take back one of the small hooks which my conscience forced me to offer to him, but said, "A trade is a trade. The hook was bad. It is not your fault." No, I could not sleep. These little shabby wrongs upbraided me and tortured me, and with a pain much sharper than one feels when the wrongs have been done to the living. Nicholas was living, but not more, but no more. He was to me as one already dead. The wind was still moaning about the eaves, the rain still pattering upon the panes. In the morning I sought out Seppi and told him. He was down by the river, his lips moved, but he did not say anything. He only looked dazed and stunned, and his face turned very white. He stood like that for a few moments, the tears welling in his eyes. Then he turned away, and I locked my arm in his, and we walked along, thinking but not speaking. We crossed the bridge and wandered through the meadows and up along the hills and the woods, and at that last talk came and flowed freely, and it was all about Nicholas, and was recalling of his life we had lived with him. And every now and then Seppi said to himself, 12 days. Less than 12 days. We said we must be with him all the time. We must have him all we could. The days were precious now. We could not go and to seek him. It would be like meeting the dead, but we were afraid. We did not say it, but what we were feeling. So it gave us a shock when we turned the curve and saw Nicholas face to face. He shouted gaily, "Hi, hi! What is the matter? Have you seen a ghost?" We couldn't speak, but there was no occasion. He was willing to talk for us all, for he had just seen Satan and was in high spirits about it. Satan had told him about our trip to China, and he had begged Satan to take him a journey, and Satan had promised. It would be a far journey and wonderful and beautiful, and Nicholas had begged him to take us too, but he said no, it would take us someday, maybe not now. Satan would come for him on the 13th, and Nicholas was already counting the hours. He was so impatient. That was the fatal day. We were already counting the hours, too. We wandered many a mile, always following paths which had been our favorites from days when we were little, and always we talked about old times. All the blitheness was with Nicholas. We others could not shake off our depression. Our tone towards Nicholas was so strangely gentle and tender and yearning that he noticed it and was pleased, and we were constantly doing him deferential little offices of courtesy, saying, "Wait, let me do that for you." And that pleased him too. I gave him 7 fish hooks, all I had, and made him take them. And Seppi gave him his new knife and a humming top painted red and yellow, atonements for swindles practiced upon him formerly, as I learned later, and probably no longer remembered by Nicholas now. These things touched him, and he could not have believed that we loved him so, and his pride in it and gratefulness for it cut us to our heart, and we were undeserving of them. When we parted at last, he was radiant and said he had never had such a happy day. As we walked along the homeward, Seppi said, "We always prized him, but never so much as now, when we are going to lose him." The next day and every day, we spent all our spare time with him, and also added it to time which we and he stole from work and other duties, and this cost us three of us some sharp scoldings and some threats of punishment. Every morning 2 of us woke with a start and a shudder, saying, as the days flew along, "Only 10 days left, only 9 days left, only 8, only 7, and so on." Always it seemed narrowing. Always Nicholas was happy, and always puzzled because we were not. He wore his invention to the bone, always trying to invent ways to cheer us up, but it only a hollow success. He could see that our jollity had no heart in it, and that the laughs we broke came in against some obstruction or another, and suffered damage and decay into a sigh. He tried to find out what the matter was, so that he could help us out of our trouble or make it lighter by sharing it with us. So we had to tell many lies to deceive him and appease him. But the most distressing thing of all was that he was always making plans, and often they were beyond the 13th. Whenever that happened, it made us groan in spirit. All his mind was fixed upon finding some way to conquer our depression and cheer us up. And at last, when we had but 3 days to live, we fell into the right idea and was jubilant over it. A boys and girls frolic and dance in the woods, and there where we first met Satan. And this was to occur on the 14th. It was ghastly, for that was his funeral day. We couldn't venture to protest. Why would we have brought up a why? Which he could answer. He wanted us to help him invite the guests, and we did it. One could refuse nothing to a dying friend. But it was dreadful, for really we were inviting them to his funeral. It was an awful 11 days, and yet with a lifetime stretching back between today and then, they were still a grateful memory to me, and a beautiful. In effect, they were days of companionship with one's sacred dead, and I have known no comradeship that was so close or so precious. We clung to the hours and the minutes, counting them as they passed away, and parting with them that pain and the bereavement which miser feels who sees his hoard filched from him coin by robbers, and is helpless to prevent it. When the evening of the last day came, we stayed out too long. Seppi and I were in fault for that. We could not bear to part with Nicholas, for it was very late when we left him at his door. He lingered near a while, listening and happening which we were fearing. His father gave him the promised punishment, and heard his shrieks. But we listened only a moment, then hurried away remorsefully for this thing which we'd caused, in sorrow for the father too, our thought being, if he only knew, if he only knew. In the morning, Nicholas did not meet us at the appointed place, so we went to his home to see the matter. His mother said, his father is out of all patience with these goings on, and will not have any more of it. Half the time when Nick is needed, he is not to be found. Then it turns out he had been gating around with you two. His father gave him a flogging last night. He always grieved me before, and many of his times I have begged him off and saved him. But this time he appealed to me in vain, and I out of patience myself. I wish you had saved him just this one time, I said, my voice trembling a little. It would ease a pain in your heart to remember it some day. She was ironing at the time, and her back was partially towards me. She turned about with a startled or wondered look on her face and said, what do you mean by that? I was not prepared, and did not know anything to say, so it was awkward, for she kept looking at me, but Seppi was alert and spoke up. Why, of course it would be pleasant to remember, for our very reason, that we were out so late with Nicholas, got to telling how good you are to him, and how he never got whipped when you were by to save him. And he was so full of it, and we were so full of the interest of it, that none of us noticed how late it was getting. Did he say that? Did he? And she put her apron on to her eyes. You can ask Theodore. He will tell you the same. It is a dear, good lad, my Nick, he said. She said, I am sorry I let him get whipped. I will never do it again. To think all the time I was sitting here last night, fretting and angry at him, and he was loving me and praising me. Dear, dear, if we could only know. Then we shouldn't ever go wrong, but we are only poor dumb beasts groping around and making mistakes. I shan't ever think of that night without a pang. She was like all the rest. It seemed as if no one could open a mouth in these wretched days without saying something that made us shiver. They were groping around, and did not know what sorrowfully true things they were saying by accident. Seppi asked if Nicholas might go out with us. I'm sorry, she answered, but he can't. To punish him further, his father doesn't allow him to go out of the house today. We had great hope. I saw it in Seppi's eyes, and we thought, if he cannot leave the house, he cannot be drowned. Seppi asked to make sure. Must he stay in all day, or only this morning? All day. It is such a pity, too. Such a beautiful day, and he is so unused to being shut up. But he is busy planning his party, and maybe that is his company for him. I do hope that he isn't too lonesome. Seppi saw that in her eye, which emboldened him to ask if we might go up and help him pass his time. And welcome, she said right heartily. Now I can tell that real friendship, when you might be abroad in some fields and the woods having a good time. You are good boys, and I'll allow that, though you don't always find satisfactory ways of improving it. Take these cakes for yourselves and give him this one, from his mother. The first thing we noticed when we entered Nicholas's room was the time, 9:45. Could that be correct? Only such a few minutes to live. I felt contradiction at my heart. Nicholas jumped up and gave us a glad welcome. He was in good spirits over his planning for his party, and had not been lonesome. Sit down, he said, and looked at what I've been doing. Sit down, he said, and take a look at what I've been doing. I've finished a kite that you will say is a beauty. It's drying in the kitchen. I'll fetch it. He had been spending his penny savings in fanciful trifles, a variety of kinds, to go as prizes in the games. They were marshaled with fine, showy effort upon the table. He said, "Examine them at your leisure, while I get mother to touch up the kite with her iron, if it isn't dry enough." Then he tripped out and went clattering downstairs whistling. We did not look at the things. We could not take any interest in anything but the clock. We sat staring at it in silence, listening to the ticking, and every time we minute hand jumped, we nodded recognition. 1 minute fewer to cover in the race for life or for death. Finally, Seppi drew a deep breath and said, 2 minutes to 10. 7 more minutes and he will pass the death point. Theodore, he is going to be saved. He's going to. Hush, I'm on needles. Watch the clock. It keeps still. 5 minutes more. We were panting with strain and the excitement. Another 3 minutes. There was a footstep on the stair. Saved! We jumped up and faced the door. The old mother entered, bringing the kite. "Isn't it a beauty?" she said. "And dear me, how he slaved over it ever since daylight. I think and only finished it a while before you came." She stood it against the wall and stepped back to take a view of it. He drew the pictures of his own self, and I think they are very good. The church isn't so very good, I'll have to admit. But look at the bridge. Anyone can recognize the bridge in a minute. He asked me to bring it up here. Dear me, it's 10:07, and but where is he? He? Oh, he'll be here soon. He's gone out for a minute. Gone out? Yes. Just as he came downstairs, little Lisa's mother came in and said the child had wandered off somewhere, and as she was little uneasy, I told Nicholas to go, never mind his father's orders. Go and look her up. Why, how white you two do look. I do believe you are sick. Sit down. I'll fetch something. That cake has disagreed with you. It is a little heavy, but I thought... She disappeared without finishing her sentence, and we hurried at once to the back window and looked towards the river. There was a great crowd at the end of the other bridge, and the people were flying towards that point from every direction. Oh, it is all over. Poor Nicholas. Why, oh, why did she let him come out of the house? Come away, said Seppi, half sobbing. Come quick. We can't bear to meet her. In 5 minutes she will know. But we were not to escape. She came up to meet us at the foot of the stairs with cordials in her hands, and made us come and sit down and take the medicine. Then she watched the effect, and it did not satisfy her, so she made us wait longer, and kept upbraiding herself for giving us some unwholesome cake. Presently the thing happened which we were dreading. There was a sound of tramping and scraping outside. The crowd came in solemnly, with heads uncovered, laid the two drowned bodies on the bed. Oh my God! The poor mother cried out, and fell to her knees, and put her arms to her dead boy, and began to cover the wet face with kisses. Oh, it was that I sent him, and I have been his death. If I had obeyed and kept him in the house, this would not have happened. And I am rightly punished. I was cruel to him last night, and him begging me, his own mother, to be his friend. And so she went on, and all the women cried and pitied her, and tried to comfort her, but she could not forgive herself, and could not be comforted, and kept on saying if she had not sent him out, he would be alive and well now, and she was the cause of his death. It shows how foolish people are when they blame themselves for anything they have done. Satan knows. And he said nothing happens that first act hasn't arranged to happen and made inevitable and so on. So your own motion can't ever alter the scheme or do a thing that will break a link. Next we heard screams, and Frau Brandt came wildly plowing and plunging through the crowd with her dress in disorder and hair flying loose, and flung herself upon her dead child with moans and kisses and pleadings and endearments, and by she rose up, almost exhausted with her outpourings of passion and emotion, and clenched her fists and lifted it towards the sky, and her tear-drenched face grew hard and resentful, and she said, "For nearly 2 weeks I have had dreams and premonitions and warnings that death was going to strike what was most precious to me. And day and night I have groveled in the dirt before him, praying him to have pity on my innocent child and save it from harm. And here is his answer." Why? He had saved it from harm, but she did not know. She wiped the tears from her eyes and cheeks, stood a while gazing at the child and caressing her face and hair with her hands, and then spoke again in that bitter tone. But in his hard heart he has no compassion. I will never pray again. She gathered the dead child to her bosom, strode away, the crowd falling back to let her pass, and smitten dumb by the awful words they had heard. Ah, and that poor woman! It is Satan said, "We do not know good fortune from bad, and there are always mistakings from one to the other." Many a time since I have heard people pray to God and spare the life of sick persons, but I have never seen it done. Both funerals and took place at the same time in our little church next day. Everybody was there, including the party guests. Satan was there too, which was proper, for it was on account of his efforts that the funerals had happened. Nicholas had departed this life without absolution, and a collection had been taken up for masses to get him out of purgatory. Only 2/3 of the required money was gathered, and the parents were going to try and borrow the rest, but Satan furnished it. He told us privately that there was no purgatory, but he had contributed in order that Nicholas's parents and their friends might be saved from worry and distress. We thought it very good of him, but he said money did not cost him anything. At the graveyard, the body of little Lisa was seized for debt by a carpenter who to whom the mother owed 50 groschens for work done over the year before. She had never been able to pay this, and was not able now. The carpenter took the corpse home and kept it 4 days in his cellar, the mother weeping and imploring about his house all the time. Then he buried it in his brother's cattle yard without religious ceremonies. It drove the mother wild with grief and shame, and she forsook her work and went daily about the town, cursing the carpenter and blaspheming the laws of the emperor and the church, and it was pitiful to see. Seppi asked Satan to interfere, but he said the carpenter and the rest of the members of the human race were acting quite neatly for that species of animal. He would interfere if found a horse acting in such a way, and we must inform him when we came across that kind of horse doing that kind of human thing, so he could stop it. We believed this was sarcasm, for of course there wasn't any horse. But after a few days we found that we could not abide that poor woman's distress, so we begged Satan to examine her several possible careers, and see if he could not change her, to her profit, to a new one. He said that the longest of her careers, as they stood now, gave her 45 years to live, and the shortest one 29, and that both were changed with the grief and the hunger and the cold and the pain. The only improvement he could make would be to enable her to skip a certain 3 minutes from now, and he asked us if he should do it. This was such a short time to decide, in that we went to pieces with nervous excitement. But before we could pull ourselves together and ask for particulars, he said the time would be up in a few seconds, and so we gasped out, "Do it." "It is done," he said. "She was going around a corner. I have turned her back, It has changed her career. What will happen, Satan? It is happening now. She is having words with Fisher, the weaver. In his anger, Fisher will straightway do what he did not have done before this accident. He was present when she stood over the child's body and uttered those blasphemies. What will he do? He is doing it now, betraying her. In 3 days she will go to the stake. We could not speak. We were frozen with horror. For if we were not to meddle with her career, she would not have been spared this awful fate. Satan noticed these thoughts and said, "What are you thinking is directly human-like? That is to say, foolish. The woman is advantaged. Die when she might go to heaven. By this prompt death, she gets 29 more years of heaven than is entitled to her, and escapes 29 years of misery here." A moment before, we were bitterly making up our minds that we should ask no more favors of Satan for friends of ours, for he did not seem to know any way to do a person a kindness but a killing them. But the whole aspect of the case was changed now, and we were glad that we had done, and full of happiness in the thought. After a little, I began to feel troubled about Fisher, and asked timidly, "Does this episode change Fisher's life scheme, Satan?" Change it? Why, certainly, and radically. If he had not met Frau Brandt a while ago, he would have died next year, 34 years of age. Now he will live to be 90 and have a pretty prosperous and comfortable life of it, as human lives go. We felt a great joy and pride in what we had done for Fisher, and were expecting Satan to sympathize with this feeling, but he showed no sign, and this made us uneasy. We waited for him to speak, but he didn't. So to assuage his solicitude, we asked him if there was any defect in Fisher's good luck. Satan considered the question a moment, then said without hesitation, "Well, the fact is, it is a delicate point. Under his several former possible life careers, he was going to heaven." We were aghast. "Oh, Satan, under this one?" "There is no need to be distressed. You were sincerely trying to do him a kindness. Let that comfort you." "Oh, dear, dear, that cannot comfort us. We ought to have told, you ought to have told us what we were doing, then we wouldn't have acted so." But it made no impression on him. He had never felt a pain or a sorrow, and did not know what they were in any really informing way. He had no knowledge of this. He had no knowledge of them except theoretically, that is to say, intellectually. And of course, that is no good. One can never get any but a loose and ignorant notion of such things except by experience. We tried our best to make him comprehend the awful things that had been done and how we were compromised by it, but he could not seem to get a hold of it. He said that he did not think it important where Fisher went. Heaven, he would not be missed. There were plenty there. We tried to make him see that he was missing the point entirely, that Fisher and other people were not the proper to decide the importance of it. But it all went for nothing. He said he did not care for Fisher. There were plenty more Fishers. The next minute Fisher went by on the other side of the way, and it made us sick and faint to see him, remembering the doom that he was upon him, and we were cause of it, and how unconscious he was of that anything happened to him. You could see by his elastic step and alert manner that he was well satisfied with himself for doing that hard turn for poor Frau Brandt. He kept glancing back over his shoulder expectantly, and sure enough, pretty soon Frau Brandt followed him, in charge of the officers, wearing jingling chains. A mob was in her wake, jeering and shouting, blasphemer, heretic, and some among them were neighbors and friends of her happier days. Some were trying to strike her, and the officers would not taking much trouble, as it was taking them from it. Oh, stop them, Satan! It was out of it was out of before we remembered that he could not interrupt them for a moment without changing their whole afterlives. He puffed a little puff towards them and with his lips and began to reel and stagger and grab at the empty air. Then they broke apart and fled in every direction, shrieking as if in tolerable pain. He had crushed a rib in each of them with a little puff. He could not help asking We could not help asking if their life chart had changed. Yes, entirely. Some have gained years, some have lost them. Some will profit in various ways by the change, but only that few. We did not ask we did not ask if we had brought poor Fisher luck to any of them. We did not wish to know. We fully believed in Satan's desire to do us kindness, but were losing confidence in his judgment. It was at this time that our growing anxiety to have him look over our life charts and suggested improvements began to fade out and gave place to other interests. For a day or two, the whole village was chattering turmoil over Frau Brandt's case and over the mysterious calamity that had overtaken the mob. And at her trial, the place was crowded. She was easily convicted of her blasphemies, for she uttered those terrible words again, and she said she would not take them back. When warned that she was imperiling her life, she said it would take it in welcome, and she did not want it. She would rather live with the professional devils in perdition than with the imitators in the village. They accused her of breaking all their ribs by witchcraft, and asked her if she was a witch. She answered scornfully, "No. If I had that power, would any of you holy hypocrites be alive 5 minutes? No. I would strike you all dead. Pronounce your sentence and let me go. I am tired of your society." So they found her guilty, and she was excommunicated and cut off from the joys of heaven and doomed to the fires of hell. Then she was clothed in coarser robe and delivered to the secular arm and conducted to the marketplace, the bell solemnly tolling while we saw her chained to the stake and saw the first film of blue smoke rise in the still air. Then her hard face softened and looked upon the packed crowd in front of her and said with gentleness, "We played together once in long agone days, when we were innocent little creatures. For the sake of that, I forgive you." We went away and did not see the fires consume her, but we heard the shrieks. Although we put our fingers in our ears, when they ceased, we knew that she was in heaven, notwithstanding the excommunication, and we were glad of her death and not sorrow that we had brought it about it. One day, a little while after this, Satan appeared again. We were always watching out for him, for life had never been very stagnant when he was by. He came upon us at the place in the woods where we had first met him. Being boys, we wanted to be entertained, so we asked him to do a show for us. "Very well," he said. "Would you like to see the history of progress of the human race? Its development of that product which we call civilization?" We said we would. So with a thought, he turned the place into the Garden of Eden and saw Abel praying by his altar. Then Cain came walking towards him with the club and did not see us, and we would have stepped on his foot if we had not drawn it in. He spoke to his brother in a language which we did not understand. Then he grew violent and threatening, and we knew what was going to happen, and turned away our heads for a moment, but we heard the crash of the blows, and heard the shrieks and the groans. Then there was silence, and we saw Abel lying in his blood, and gasping out for his life, and Cain standing over him, looking down at him vengeful and unrepentant. Then the vision vanished, and was followed by a long series of unknown wars, murders, and massacres. Next, we had the flood and the ark tossing around in the stormy waters, with lofty mountains in the distance, showing veiled and dim through the rain. Satan said, "The progress of your race was not satisfactory. It is to have another chance now." The scene changed, and we saw Noah overcome with wine. Next, we had Sodom and Gomorrah and the attempt to discover 2 or 3 respectable persons there, as Satan described it. Next, Lot and his daughters in the cave. Next came the Hebronic Wars, and we saw the victors massacre the survivors and their cattle, and save the young girls alive and distribute them around. Next, we saw Jael, and saw her slip into the tent, drive the nail into the temple of her sleeping guest. And we were so close when we heard the blood gush out of trickled a little red stream on our feet. We could have stained our hands if we had wanted to. Next, we saw the Egyptian wars, Greek wars, Roman wars, hideous drenchings of the earth with blood, and we saw the treacheries of the Romans towards the Carthaginians, and the sickening spectacle of the massacre of the brave people. We also saw Caesar invade Britain, but not those barbarians had, but invade Britain, not that those barbarians had done him any harm, but because he wanted their land and desired to confer the blessings of civilization upon their widows and orphans, as Satan explained. Next, Christianity was born. Then ages of Europe passed in review before us, and we saw Christianity and civilization march hand in hand through the ages, leaving famine and death and desolation in their wake, and other signs of the progress of the human race, as Satan observed. And always we had wars and still more wars all over Europe, all over the world. Sometimes in the private interest of royal families, Satan said, sometimes to crush a weak nation, but never a war started by the aggressor for any clean purpose. There is no such war in the history of race. Now, said Satan, you have seen your progress down to the present, and you must confess that it is wonderful in its way. We must now exhibit the future. He showed us slaughters, more terrible in their destruction than lives, more devastating in their engines of war than any had seen. You perceive, he said, that you have made continual progress. Cain did murder with a club, the Hebrews did their murders with javelins and swords, the Greeks and the Romans added protective armor and fine arts to military organization and generalship. The Christian had added guns and gunpowder. A few centuries from now, he will have greatly improved the deadly effectiveness of his weapons of slaughter, that all men will confess that without Christian civilization, war must have remained a poor and trifling thing to the end of time. Then he began to laugh in the most unfeeling way and make fun of the human race, although he knew that he had been saying, shamed us and wounded us. No one but an angel could have acted so, but suffering is nothing to them. They do not know what it is except by hearsay. More than once, Seppi and I tried in humble and different ways to convert him, and as he had remained silent, we had taken his silence as a sort of encouragement. Necessarily, then, this talk of his was a disappointment to us, for it showed that we had made no deep impression upon him. The thought made us sad, and we knew then how the missionary must feel when he had been cherishing a glad hope and then had seen it blighted. We kept our grief to ourselves, knowing that this was not the time to continue our work. Satan laughed his unkind laugh to a finish. Then he said, It is a remarkable progress. In 5 or 6 thousand years, 5 or 6 high civilizations have risen, flourished, commanded the wonder of the world, then faded out and disappeared. And not one of them, except the one latest, ever invented any sweeping or adequate way of killing people. They all did their best to kill being the chiefest among ambition of the human race and the earliest incident in its history. But only in the Christian civilization has scored a triumph to be proud of. 2 or 3 centuries from now, it will be recognized that all competent killers are Christians. Then the pagan world will go to school the Christian, not to acquire his religion, but his guns. The Turk and the Chinaman will buy those to kill the missionaries and convert converts with us. By this time, his theater was at work again, and before our eyes, nations after nations drifted by. During 2 or 3 centuries, a mighty procession, an endless procession, raging, struggling, swallowing through the seas of blood, smothered in the battle smoke through which the flags glinted and the red jets from the cannons darted, and always we heard the thunder of the guns and the cries of the dying. And what is it meant to? What does it amount to? Said Satan with his evil chuckle. Nothing at all. You gain nothing. You always come out where you went in. For millions of years, the race has gone on monotonously propagating itself and monotonously performing this dull nonsense. To what end? No wisdom can guess. Who gets a profit out of it? Nobody but a parcel of usurping little monarchs and nobilities who despise you, would feel defiled if you touch them, would shut the door in your face if you propose to call, whom you slave for, fight for, die for, and not are ashamed of it, but proud, whose existence is a perpetual insult to you, and you are afraid to resent it, who are mendicants supported by your alms, yet assume towards you the airs of a benefactor towards beggar, who address you in the language of master to slave, and are answered in the language of slave to master, who are worshipped by you with your mouth, while in your heart, if you have one, you despise yourself for it. The first man was a hypocrite, and a coward, qualities which you have not failed in his line. It is the foundation upon which all civilizations have been built. Drink to their preputations. Drink to their preputations. Drink to their augmentations. Drink to. And we saw by his face how much we were hurt. And he cut his sentence short by stopped chuckling, and his manner changed. He said gently, "No, we will drink one another's health, and let civilization go. His wine, which has flown out of his hands, out of space, by desired, is earthly and good enough for each other toast. But throw away the glasses. We will drink this one in wine, which has not visited this world before." We obeyed and reached up and received the new cups as they descended. They were shapely and beautiful goblets, but they were not made of any material that we were acquainted with. They seemed to be in motion. They seemed to be alive, and certainly the colors in them were in motion. They were very brilliant and sparkling, and of every tint, and they were never still, but flowed to and fro in rich tides, which met and it broke with flashed out dainty explosions of enchanted colors. I think it was most like opals washing about in waves and flashing out in their splendid fires. But there is nothing to compare the wine with. We drank it and felt a strange witching ecstasy, as of heaven go stealing through us. And Seppi's eyes and said worshipfully, "We shall be there some day." And then he glanced furtively at Satan, and I think he hoped Satan would say, "Yes, you would be there some day." But Satan seemed to be thinking about something else and said nothing. This made me feel ghastly, for I knew he had heard nothing, spoken or unspoken, ever escaped him. Poor Seppi looked distressed, and did not finish his remark. The goblets rose and clove their way to the sky, a triplet of radiant sundogs, and disappeared. Why didn't they stay? It seemed a bad sign, and depressed me. Should I ever see mine again? Would Seppi ever see his? Chapter 9. Now, I mentioned earlier, last week before, these chapters that Mark Twain set out for The Mysterious Stranger were honestly very large chapters. I've read 2 chapters. That's an hour and 40 minutes. So I'm telling you what, guys, as much as I said I was going to read chapters 7, 8, 9, I'm going to pull the plug right now because this is going long. And next week, we will pick up with chapter 9, and we will go chapters 9, 10, 11 next week. And then, with 9, 10, 11, signal the end of The Mysterious Stranger by Mark Twain. These were long chapters, and I hope you enjoyed them. Very long chapters. It's getting intriguing. Nicholas is gone. It is now only Theodore and Seppi. And it's going to be interesting to see how the last 3 chapters bear out. As I mentioned before, when you guys get a chance, and I appreciate everybody who's been stopping by, don't forget to, when you get a chance, if you find us here on Twitch or here on YouTube, to please remember to like and subscribe. We're going to take off out of here. This has been a wonderful book. I hope you guys have been enjoying The Mysterious Stranger by Mark Twain. Next week, we will do chapters 9, 10, 11, the final 3 chapters. And we will do our best, and I'm going to see if I can actually get away with this. If I can do this. Doing something I haven't done before. If I can change in midstream the title card that comes up. There was originally 7, 8, and dash 9. I just got rid of the 9. We'll see if it comes up on the tag for the other channels. Before we go, as I do on the Thursday night show, I have a final quote for the night. And honestly, kind of fitting to what's been going on in the world lately and what's going on in the book. Our final quote for the night is from the former president, Teddy Roosevelt. To announce that there must be no criticism of the president, or that we are to stand by the president, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but is morally treasonable to the American public. To announce that there must be no criticism of the president, or that we are to stand by the president, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but is morally treasonable to the American public. Some thoughtful words from a former president over a century old. we're going to get out of here. You guys take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful Sunday, wonderful Monday, wonderful week ahead. And we will see everybody Thursday night on our Twitch channel, Accessibly Live, the conversation station. And then we will see you all next Sunday for the final 3 chapters, 9, 10, 11. I promise, cross my heart, we will get those chapters done. I am Joel K. This is Accessibly Live, the conversation station, sister station, the book club reading room. I caught myself. Be well, be safe, be kind, everyone. We have a lot of crazy things going on in the world, a lot of very dumb people going on in the world right now. It's time we start looking after each other. Be well, be safe, be kind. We will see you all next week for the final 3 chapters of Mark Twain's The Mysterious Stranger, here on Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.